we are going to hear a talk called Going Local, the Social, Ecological, and Spiritual Benefits by Helena Norberg-Hodge, one of my favorite speakers and activists of all time. Um, she's a pioneer of the local economy movement. She's widely respected analyst of the impact of the global economy and international development on local communities, local economies, and personal identity. And she's a leading proponent of localization, or what we often call decentralization, as a means of countering those impacts. Her most recent book, Local is Our Future: Steps to an Economics of Happiness, has been described by author David Korten, another important voice in the alternative economy movement, as you might know. He said, it's a must read for our time. The Earth Journal counted Helena among the world's 10 most interesting environmentalists. Since 1975, she has worked with the people of Ladakh, or Little Tibet, to find ways of enabling their culture to meet the modern world without sacrificing social and ecological values. For these efforts, she was awarded the Right Livelihood Award, or the Alternative Nobel Prize. She was awarded the prestigious Goi Peace Prize in 2012. I personally encountered her through her book, Ancient Futures, many years ago. And then I had the fortune of hearing her speak in the mid 90s in Oregon when I was living there. So I am incredibly pleased to welcome Helena Norberg-Hodge to this conference.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and very happy to be collaborating with your alliance. It is so close to the work that we're trying to do at my organization, Local Futures. And we should have mentioned actually in the bio that we launched last year World Localization Day. And we've been very pleased that we've had support from prominent figures, from Noam Chomsky to the Dalai Lama, to people like Martin Reed, Russell Brand, and a few other many other well-known people. Also economists and writers, activists. From now, last year we collaborated with 80 groups in 30 countries. So we're really doing very parallel work to the Systems Alliance. So I really look forward to collaborating more. My organization started basically because of my experiences in this place called Ladakh, or Little Tibet. It's a part of India politically, but culturally and as it were geographically, it's part of Tibet. It's high up on the Tibetan plateau. Most of the people live around 11,000 to 12,000 feet, 3,500 meters. They are up on that high Tibetan plateau in a desert, surrounded by the high mountains. They were snowed for about 8 months of the year. So it wasn't sort of a little Shangri-La, if you like, that had been quite untouched by colonialism. And before that, by Christianity. And it had been untouched by modern development. When I arrived there in the mid-1970s, I had come out as part of a film team. I was only going to be there for a few weeks to help make a film. I had been asked to go because I was a linguist and I picked up languages easily. And so I was to help with the communication and also to help them bring the sound for the skill. But almost overnight, I fell in love with these people. I had never encountered people more radiantly vital and joyous. It was one of the most beautiful places on the planet because they were none of the ugliness of the high-rise buildings or high tension wires. So it was the most beautiful place and the happiest people I had ever encountered. So I ended up staying after the film was finished. At first, I was going to do a PhD on language, and I helped to write it down for the first time, the spoken language. So I helped to put together a dictionary. And as I went through this region with about 100 villages in about the size of Austria, so often walking for days to then encounter these small villages, almost like islands you could stay in the desert. Everywhere I went, I was encountered by people who would invite me to have what they thought was the most delicious food. And they kept saying to me, have you tasted all the variety we have, which from our point of view was very limited. But there was this amazing sense of having enough, of having people felt they had a lot. I never, ever heard a single voice saying, we are poor and backward, can you please help us? I learned to speak the language fluently, and so I had that great privilege of speaking their language before the onset of what in the modern world is a very important phenomenon that we need in the West to understand better. And that is that in the modern world, the destruction of cultural identity goes via media, via images, advertising, television, and now it's in social media and so on. That psychological impact I saw dramatically in Ladakh, where within a very short period, young children as young as 5 years were affected by what came in as Ladakh was opened up. I had come in as one of the first outsiders. Now the area was open to tourism and to development. So I had witnessed, along with one road, the changes coming in. And after 16 years of seeing those changes, I wrote a book called Ancient Futures, where I describe the mechanisms whereby the global economic system destroys self-respect, breaks down the community fabric, particularly the intergenerational contact between the young and the old, how it breaks down respect for experiential knowledge of specific ecosystems, specifics of life that are everywhere unique, the water, the soil, and how that relates to the movement of the stars. That deep ecological knowledge which had evolved over thousands of years, which included a medical system where there had also been written books going back to the 800, about 800. And this knowledge in the medical sphere included the use of herbs and various remedies, some which are considered strange as in Chinese medicine. But there was clearly very deep adapted knowledge of how to survive in this very unusual environment. Excuse me. So what I saw was that mechanisms that are the most active tools of a global economic system that started with, it had forerunners in Christianity, but then started with this modern global economy where some elites in Europe were able to drive people off the land in Europe using force and closures. People were driven off the land into what became very polluted and crowded and dysfunctional cities. They, at the same time, enslaved people on the other side of the world to produce the cotton and electrical tea, for tea. Around the world, the Europeans created a system of force. Everywhere, what was happening was that people were being driven away from their local economy. And I witnessed how that process of destroying the local economy in the modern era, in the mid-1970s, included this extreme psychological pressure. So whenever we try to understand what's going on in the world, we must take into account the psychological dimension. What I saw was that, as I said, the children suddenly got the impression that on the other side of the world was this modern Western, archetypically American culture where people didn't need to work.